Welcome to the Life of Hair. My name's James Atkinson. Thank you for joining me in this week's episode. Now, this week's episode is all about mixing techniques. Now, on the channel, there's loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of tutorials, color, cut, you name it. But you know what? They're there for you to take and make your own. Intermix them, mash them up, add them to what you already know, because what you already know is never in question. What you already know has got you this far in your career. What you already know has got you doing your hair the way that you like it. So it's never about me saying this is my way and this is the only way. It's only ever about adding to what you know already. So that being said, this technique brings two techniques together, and it's something that I've covered both of these techniques on the channel before, but never in this way. So the first thing we're going to look at will be freehand spatula highlighting. Now that's one of my all-time favourite hair colouring techniques. But then we're going to marry that together with a money piece technique around the face, just to give it a little bit of extra pop. I'll talk a little bit about the reasoning why we did that in the video and give you a little bit more of a background and insight into why we went down that road. But I think it's really good to be able to bring you the commercial looks that I create day to day in the salon. And not only that, but the whys, the wheres and the hows. So if you enjoyed this episode, then do me the massive favour, hit that thumbs up button. Massively helps the videos. Subscribe if you haven't already. If you've watched 6 or 7 of my videos and you forgot to hit that subscribe button and haven't got around to it yet, then do me that massive favour of hitting that subscribe button. Chat to me down in the comments. I love to hear from you. All of these things really help the channel grow. I really appreciate each and every one of you who puts in that little bit of extra effort. It goes a long way. Have a wonderful week, and I'll catch you in another episode of The Life of Hair very soon. So here is our starting point to this technique. Now I'm going to give you a little bit of background. This lady had her hair coloured, another salon, and always found that when she'd actually moved, I think from London or somewhere, and she found that whenever she was getting her hair done in Brighton, she was getting warm results. She didn't know why, I didn't know why, but that's what was happening. So she'd come to me, she said, look, I've got this brassy mid zone, which you just saw above the brightest blonde on the ends. Even the blonde on the ends was quite yellowy, which I totally agreed with. She didn't want the high maintenance, really bright blonde colour that she was kind of getting, but equally she didn't want orange. So there was going to have to be a halfway house in terms of how we went about this particular technique. And I'll quickly talk about freehand highlighting in this way for a second. As I said in the intro, one of my favourite ways to colour hair, and it's a really simple technique. It works beautifully. Lots of people worry about the bleach printing on the hair underneath. There is a very important trick to the way that you take your weave to avoid that, and I'm not going to tell you how to do that because no, I'm only joking. Now, the secret to getting the weave right is to make sure that you dig down deep enough through the section. You're creating tiny little V-shaped weaves. Now that leaves enough hair underneath the section so that it doesn't saturate all the way through perfectly, and it creates a bit of a buffer, and when it touches the hair below, it doesn't mark it at all. Listen, I know there's loads of skepticism around this particular technique, and lots of people have commented on other videos with this technique that's in it, but look, I wouldn't use it if it was going to print on the hair beneath. I'd have to go around correcting, print marks. And I don't want to be doing that on a day-to-day basis. I will only ever use techniques that just work. And this is one of those techniques with a little bit of practice, and bearing in mind, you've got to get those little V-shaped weaves into the technique. You will be bang on the money. So try it, friend, relative, doll's head, wherever, before you do it on a real life paying client. Make sure your sections aren't too thin. In between each section you're going to need at least 5 millimeters, but remember, you're digging down into that section. The width of each of those sections doesn't specifically matter, but a good gauge would be to make the depth of your weave a similar depth to the width of your weave. So if the width of your weave was, say, let's say 3 mm wide, it would want to be approximately 3 mm deep as well. Just a little gauge there for you, so that hopefully it will give you a better insight into, you know, how we go about these techniques. I just love it. You know, it's one of those so quick, easy techniques. It's done, you know, in half the time foils are done. I can get a full head of this done 45 minutes, you know, chatting away, you know, doing other things, talking to, you know, the client, apprentices, getting people, you know, involved in the, well, and actually I'm just going to say the reason we've got no masks on in this video is because this was filmed pre mask wearing. This was actually filmed just before lockdown 1.0, the very first lockdown in March. I think I did this hair back in February time. So that explains the no masks for anybody that's like wondering where our masks are and why we're not working with a mask. You know, and I think it's watching this video, it feels like a different world. But anyway, that's a different story. One little hot tip when it comes to blending up towards the root area with this particular technique is that we use those vertical brush strokes just to blend up towards the scalp area. The horizontal brush strokes to apply the product, and the vertical brush strokes just to diffuse up to the root area. Really, really important little tip there to help you with your freehand highlighting. And you know, the thing about this as well is that we're not looking to get it, you know, right on the scalp. We are expecting it to come slightly off the scalp, but this is about creating natural highlights rather than, you know, what we would, you know, achieve with a set of foils, for instance. You know, we're looking for a different vibe from this. So don't think that this is a replacement for your foils, because obviously it's not, but it is a technique in between foiling and balayaging. It fits right in the middle, and it fits perfectly. And for the essence of the job that I'm doing here, where I'm lightening the natural, I am equally wanting to remove some of that orange from that mid zone in the hair. This is a really, really useful technique to do, and I absolutely love it. So definitely worth having this one in the toolkit. Now, the thing about this lady's hair as well, obviously, you can see there's a reasonably high percentage of white. So she doesn't want to keep going down the heavily highlighted road. She's got a natural regrowth. She's got white hairs coming through. She's got this orangey colour. So she wants to diffuse it out. So at the end of this video, I'll show you how I go about toning the hair to kind of just soften it down a little bit as well. In terms of the lightener I'm using in this particular technique as well, it's Redkin Freehand Balayage Clay Lightener, and 20 volume. Now, I'm not looking for tons and tons of lift. I literally wouldn't mind if it only lifted up to a level 8, because I'm going to soften it down to a level 8 with the toning process anyway. So that just gives you a little insight into my product choices. Obviously, I'm overlapping that orange area. It's been previously pre-lightened. The condition of the hair in that area is pretty good, so I don't feel too concerned about overlapping. I know I get a lot of comments, and I see lots of comments on other people's videos about overlapping bleach. If the hair is in reasonable condition and it's been previously pre-lightened, then there's not really any reason why we can't go over it. Obviously, we will exacerbate and increase the damage levels, but we do have to obviously bear in mind that this is just one of those things, and sometimes it's necessity rather than... We'd all like to never have to overlap bleach, of course, but in this instance it's unavoidable. So definitely bear that in mind, guys. If you need to overlap bleach, then do it with good purpose, and bear in mind that generally you can. Obviously, I'm using a bonder in this as well. Whenever I overlap bleach, or I know I need to overlap bleach in the consultation, I will have always said to the client, look, the reality is here we're going to need to overlap, so therefore we will need to use a bonder to ensure the quality of your hair. I probably would suggest that I wouldn't do it anyway without that, and that gives it up to them, then they can just walk away if they don't want to pay for the bonder, but at least I'm covered. So that's just a really good tip. We don't have to do everybody's hair just because they've come in for a consultation or they've sat in your chair. You can end up, if you say yes to everything, having more work at a loss than you can saying to that client, sorry, I can't do it, off you go. You know, damaged reputations, all those kind of things, just because you wanted to please somebody and you probably knew you couldn't. So bear that in mind, guys. It's really important that we are professional and honest. You can see as we come up to the top of the head here, we made a little triangle section, and I've just worked horizontally up that triangle section to where I split the head front to back. Remember, with these techniques, it's really important to work in the client's natural parting, or within reason, where they're going to part their hair. So we've worked up to that point, and those last few sections just horizontal straight up. So we are on to our face frame, money piece, whatever technique you want to call it. It was hotly contested in the comments last time I mentioned the word money piece. Just an interesting topic to me. It's one of those things where you've got to give something a name, haven't you? You've got to be able to name it for it to be like branded, if you like, for clients to be able to come and ask for it. I think some of the names that have been used, yeah, do sound a bit cheap, maybe. But then I've seen also equally ridiculous, $1 billion money. You know, I mean, it's a face framing highlighting technique. If you want to have a technical term on it, in fact, someone did write in the comments a really great technical term, but I can't remember what that was right now, or a technical sounding term that I particularly like the sound of. But yeah, look. And the other thing, remember, guys, when I make these videos and when I title the videos, I don't necessarily think like a hairdresser in that sense. I'm thinking like a computer that's trying to put these videos in front of highly searched for terms. So some of the title descriptions don't necessarily match up, or don't necessarily portray, you know, the technique in the most beautiful light, because that's not how computer algorithms work. Anyway, just so you know, rather than wondering why I call certain things, it's just so that people find the videos. This particular money piece technique or face framing technique isn't specifically deep or big. It was just to create a little bit of pop around the front hairline. So sectioned off about 1.5 inches back from the hairline. You've just seen me do that. And then I did 2 foils on each side. And then in the center here, I've just done 3 foils going back. First one was a slice. Next one was a little weave. This one's a little weave. Easy peasy. The front one being a slice, it had a very like irregular hairline shape, so it wasn't like a perfect slice anyway. As I sliced off the front hairline, you'll have seen that it was quite squiggly. So really quick, really easy, great to add into this, because you know the thing about this lady's hair was that, yeah, she's got fairly high percentages of white around the front. She didn't want that to come through really kind of strong, and a money piece can be really good at diffusing white hairs around the hairline as well. So it's got a really great dual benefit for this lady. The other thing obviously is that she has been blonde for a long time, and quite a yellowy blonde, generally speaking, sort of orange yellowy, and that can look quite bright. And then when you make them cooler, you can feel like, or they can say things like, and you'll have heard this, you've turned my hair brown, even though obviously we know it's like a level 8 blonde. To them, they're so used to seeing that bright yellow-orange result that reflects a lot of light. As soon as we make it cooler and a little bit darker, they instantly feel like I've turned their hair black or dark brown or whatever. You'll have all experienced that as hairstylists. So it is something to bear in mind. That little bit of face framing just diffuses that kind of initial shock from the technique. It is definitely worth doing. I had also never done this lady's hair before, so I didn't particularly know what she was like in terms of her hair. We'd had a fairly extensive consultation. She'd found me on the internet, so she had a fair amount of trust in what I said, and I did recommend the money piece just to sort of take the edge off the initial shock of deepening the root down to a cooler level 8, which I'm about to do. So this is the final section, and you can see I've worked up to the parting. There's no hair to kind of veil it. It's just two sections that are literally back to back, but I'm very comfortable with doing that based on the fact that I'm going to put a root stretch on this in just a second. Okay, time to tone. Now, in terms of obviously put in a few lighter pieces around the front, face frame blonde pieces. We obviously don't want to drop those down to a level 8 like we do on the rest of the lift. So we do just want to section those out of the way. They don't need to be like out of the way, clip to wear. They just need to be pushed out of the way. Just something to bear in mind. I've seen in classes where we've, you know, covering money pieces and then gone to do a toner, and then the person who's I'm teaching has forgotten about the money piece and overlapped the colour onto the front. Anyway, just a little bit of a word of warning. So we're now toning with a level 8, and we're painting right down past the parietal ridge, a really important place on the head to make sure that you get that colour past that parietal ridge, because the hair below the parietal ridge, it's much more movable. The hair above the parietal ridge is very, very stationary because of how close to the scalp it is. So if we want that perfect blending, perfect bleeding type result, we do need to get the colour past the parietal ridge. Really, really important. The other thing to do is to get the colour down to the occipital bone in the back of the head. That's also really important. Something to definitely bear in mind to get your blend looking absolutely bang on the money. So the next thing that everybody asks me in the comments when I do these videos is, where do you paint every other section then to? Well, if you've come down from the parting, bearing in mind we're doing this in the parting, remember we're always working in the parting generally speaking. In this particular instance, we've come down the hair about 3 inches, 2.5, 3 inches, with a sweeping motion. So we've applied the brush heavily at the roots and we're lifting away. We want to just continue with that theme throughout the technique. Okay, so it's really, really important that we just continue with the same vibe, because if we start painting shorter underneath, then it can just look like a root or a root shadow, and we're not really getting the vibe that we were trying to achieve. So in the sense of what we're doing with this colour is we're on a level 8, we've got a natural tone, so 8.0 or an 8N, with a tiny bit of 8 ash in there. Now I don't want to put loads in there because obviously I'm going to drag it over the existing lighter hair, but if you look at the lift, it's yellow, but it's really gold as well. So that means that it's pushing past 9 and it's heading towards an 8, because as you get to an 8, you're starting to get into the orange-yellow realms. And when you're in those orange-yellow realms, you need that little bit of ash to deal with those orange tones that are coming through. We didn't necessarily want this to be really, really ashy looking, which you'll see in the end result it isn't. But we did want neutralization, because one of the big problems that my lady was having with her hair was that it was orange. Now I'd obviously gone to the trouble of overlapping some of those orange sections, or probably the majority of them, with the amount of sections I ended up putting in. But there was obviously going to be some remaining, and we did need to do something about it. Now the N is naturally made up of the 3 primary colours, so it will have some blue, violet tones in there by nature, but it will still have yellow, because remember, red, yellow and blue are the 3 primary colours. When we mix our red with our blue, we're going to get violet. We've got blue existing, we're going to mix blue with yellow, we're going to get green. You know, when we're doing that primary colour mixture, obviously we don't make it, it comes in the tube. We do have to remember that there are some cooling tones in there. And on a level 8, some people experience kind of green tones, and that's because there is ash in there or blue, and sometimes that can be quite dominant in certain ranges, especially European hair colours, and you can get these kind of greeny results, and that is purely where the yellow in the hair mixed with the blue in the colour, and we got kind of khaki. It's not green, not luminous green, but it's khaki and it's muddy and it's not very bright. I was very sure that the ratio that I'd come up with here, which was about 6/8 natural to 2/8 of the level 8, which was a natural ash as well, just to bear that in mind, mixed together wasn't going to be too much to turn the hair khaki. So we've worked through the entire head now, and the secret to blending it is with the comb for me. I absolutely love using the comb to drag the product down. So the way that I think about this, and I've done a whole video on it if you want to go over to the channel and check it out, is that we're working from glossy at the roots, satin in our stretch, and then into matte through the ends. And we do that by using the comb, angling the teeth slightly backwards or completely horizontal relative to the hair, and we drag the product down, and then we can either use our fingers to disperse the product further down the head. This for me is just such a simple way of working through a root stretch. It's very fast and it's very, very effective, and it creates such a nice result. And that result you can see on the screen right now. So in our root area, we've got that very, very natural level 8 result. We blended it down into a level 9/10 natural, and the hairline was a level 9/10 natural. When I did this, it wasn't like an amazing blow dry, and I wasn't making it look perfect. My apprentice at the time had dried it off for me, and it wasn't about me kind of doing this fancy blow dry thing so that I looked like a superstar. It was literally back when I was starting to think about making these videos where it was just conveying my everyday work to you guys and kind of giving you the more behind the scenes look at, you know, making a living using these techniques. So I hope you've enjoyed this technique, this tutorial, and I hope it's given you a little bit more of an insight into how you can blend some of the techniques that you've seen on the channel previously. And if you haven't seen any of the videos from the channel previously, then do check out some of the videos that are just on the screen now, and have a wonderful week. And I will see you again in another episode of Life Affair very, very soon.